Hello, everybody. Happy New Year. Welcome to another Comic Boom Comic Source collaboration. It's our first spotlight for DC Comics for 2025. Feels so crazy to think about that. Like, man, 2025. I think back to Y2K, Rocky. I know you're old enough like me to remember that everybody was worried all the computers were going to stop working in the year 2000. And people were buying up water and candles and canned food and whatever. It does not seem like it was that long ago, the Y2K, I don't want to call it panic, but concern, the Y2K concern. But man, that was 25 years ago. I can't believe how fast time flies.
I know, and well, you and I are in our 50s, and so I mean, my nephew turned 25 on the 25th of December. We had a big quarter century birthday bash for him. It was a golden birthday because he turns 25 on the 25th, and yeah, it just sort of reminded me of my age. And then, of course, snowboarding. 2 days ago, for I was also reminded of my age because it's been 10 years since I last snowboarded, and I'm thinking maybe I'll take up skiing. I'm told it's a little bit easier, but. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I'm definitely feeling the age. But it was a good year, ended well. I Unlike some people's 2024, I had actually a pretty good year in 2024, and I thought comic books were pretty good through a good portion of 2024 too. It certainly ended well, especially for DC Comics, and yeah, 'tis the season, and yeah, so it's good to welcome in a brand new year and hopefully a brand new year of even better comics.
Yeah, it was a great year for comics and the industry. I know sales are down a little bit and the secondary market still hasn't recovered, but this is just in my mind is just correction from the boom of the pandemic when prices skyrocketed and some books, yeah, in a way they were undervalued, but the whole spec thing, buying books based on the fact that they're going to show up in other mediums or whatever. I always thought that was overblown. At the end of the day, if people are buying to just resell, if you have more people doing that, then you basically have a false floor because people want to own these books for love of the story and for love of the characters. But if the majority, even if it's 50%, maybe even you could say 40% of the people that are buying are just buying these books with the intent of reselling, then you have just a huge amount of supply at some point. At some point, people are going to stop, right? Especially if people are getting a little bit tired of the superhero movies or what have you, or they're not sustaining interest, then it's false demand. So, but we're just talking. We don't really do much. We mention spec stuff here or there. There's plenty of YouTube channels that talk about slabbing and how you can invest in comics and make the hobby pay for itself or whatever, and that's great. I watch some of those myself. But from our perspective, that's not our interest. We're readers of the stories. We're collectors of these books because we like the characters. So when we say, hey, it was a great year, 2024 was a great year for comics, we get that, hey, maybe you're still underwater on some of the books you bought as investment. That's not what we do here. We're talking about story. And in terms of story, it was a fantastic year. DC on the rise, tons of independent books and stories that are amazing, all kinds of new creators coming on the scene doing exciting stuff. Yeah, Marvel's maybe underachieving a little bit, but the characters are still beloved, and certainly their Ultimate line has been really successful. So the last week of 2024, notwithstanding, because DC put out so many books and it was a little overwhelming, and they kind of underachieved on that last week. But that was the exception. Since the All-In era has started at DC, most of the weeks have been fantastic overall. And this week is no different. We have some really great books this week with Captain Atom or Justice League, the Captain Justice League, the Atom Project, see if I can get that right, which I was lucky enough to talk to Ryan Parrott and John Ridley about. Really excited for that. That has its debut issue. Batman continues to be excellent. Third issue of Absolute Superman, which has been selling like crazy. Two-Face continues to be really interesting. So yeah, it was a really, really great week of DC books overall. What do you think of the week overall, Rocky?
I enjoyed this week. It was a good week of comics to start off 2025. I quite enjoyed it, and you and I were talking before, but we usually pick our top five. Well, there's enough that we're gonna be reviewing all this week in some capacity, and even there was one maybe that ranked the lowest, but even still like to have like a solid almost every issue I enjoyed. It was an enjoyable read this week, so it was a good way to start the year off.
Yeah, I agree 100%. We're going to kick it off with the aforementioned Justice League, the Atom Project. This is the first issue. Written by Ryan Parrott, along with John Ridley. Mike Perkins is the artist. Adriana Lucas on colors. Wes Abbott handles the letters. Uh, my biggest thing, and we don't necessarily get an idea of how this is going to be the case, but earlier in 2024, I interviewed JT Kroll and Freddie Williams II about the the new 52 Captain Atom series, which I love, and which brought it was 80% of the Captain Atom you were used to pre New 52, post Crisis, obviously, when the Charlton characters got folded in. That long running series he had, mostly written by Cary Bates. Um, it was 80% of that, but 20% of kind of a new take on Captain Atom. It was so interesting. And it didn't last that long. And then the only other Captain Atom series we've had since then is The Rise and Fall of Captain Atoms, written by the aforementioned Cary Bates, where he sort of undid some of the things that were done in what JT and Freddie had done. And I was a little bit disappointed in that. And while Captain Atom has shown up here or there since then, post New 52, we haven't really gotten an idea of who is he, how much of what JT and Freddie did is there, how much is back to the status quo from before the New 52. We haven't really gotten an idea. So that's my biggest question. Like, who is Captain Atom right now in the DC universe? And this definitely seems like it's kind of just wanting to put to the side what JT and Freddie did, which that's okay. I can understand why it doesn't necessarily fit in, or they don't think it worked, or what have you. But regardless of that, Captain Atom is, I think, an underused character. Since the New 52, he's been an underused character. He was pretty prominent at various times pre New 52. We've talked before about, over in Jenny Sparks, he's been the bad guy. They've talked about making him the bad guy before, sent him over to the Wildstorm universe for a little while. He was going to be Monarch, and then it got leaked, and they switched that over to Hank Hall, but then it got retconned where it was Nathaniel. So he's kind of been all over the place, as it were, and he does have his fan base, and I'm sure there's plenty of Captain Atom fans out there that are like, man, just give me like a Captain Atom series. Let me know who he is. Like, give me a foundation or what have you. We definitely see his heroic tendencies in this issue. And basically, he's one of those characters that after Absolute Power lost his powers. But just because of the nature of who he is and the type of powers that he had, Ray Palmer and Ryan Choi, the other two Atoms, it is the Atom Project, so you have the three Atoms, Captain Atom, Ray Palmer Atom, Ryan Choi Atom. Ryan Choi and Ray Palmer are the scientists that are trying to solve this problem. Let's get the powers back to the people that have lost them. Let's take the powers away from people that have them and can't control them, or the powers that don't belong to them. Let's take them away. And so Captain Atom is sort of the guinea pig, and they're running all these experiments on him, trying to reactivate his metagene. They're very painful, but in true soldier-like fashion, Captain Atom's up for the challenge. Now, it's as John Ridley said when he was on the show, it's the story is told in two different timelines. So we're having a kind of a flashback, if you will, back to the beginning of these experiments when they were trying to solve the problem. Captain Atom's part of that, or what have you. But when the story starts, actually, we're kind of in the present time, and Captain Atom has appeared that he's fled the Justice League Watchtower, and he's kind of on the run, but he has his powers back. So we're not exactly sure. We need to fill in that blank. We need to fill in that gap in the middle. What went wrong? I mean, and what went right? Because he does have his powers back, but it's intimated that he has more than just his powers. Like at one point, one of the soldiers says, "What powers doesn't this guy have?" So did he gain a bunch of powers? That did he then take powers from other people? Kind of almost a reoccurrence of what happened at the end of Absolute Power. And why is he not working with Ryan Choi and Ray Palmer to try to figure this out? So there's a lot of moving parts here. I think the Mike Perkins art works really, really well. When Mike was on with Ryan and John, he talked about this is not necessarily in his wheelhouse. He doesn't get asked a lot to do kind of traditional superhero stuff. He does things like Swamp Thing or other things that are a little more grounded. This is out there. This is cosmic. This is really super heroic, and he's getting a chance to flex some muscles he hasn't before. So the art is fantastic, super detailed, as we've come to expect from Mike Perkins. I thought the dialogue was done really well. I thought there was a lot of story packed into this first issue, and I'm really excited to see where it goes. I'm a big Captain Atom fan, and I feel like, yeah, he hasn't been, I don't want to say he hasn't been used correctly. He really just hasn't been used much. and I would like somebody to come along and really explore who he is and maybe bring back some of those new 52 elements that JT and Freddie did, because I thought they were really interesting. But yeah, I really enjoyed this first issue. It definitely exceeded my expectations. I mean, Ryan Parrott is a fantastic writer, John Ridley as well. So just based on that, I was hoping it would be good, and I had some expectations, but this exceeded them. I thought it was just fantastic. So, what were your thoughts on it, Rocky?
Well, I thought that of all the heroes and characters that they could have focused on, focusing on Captain Atom, I think was a very good idea for the simple reason, and we've talked about it before. You've talked about it repeatedly about the character in the last couple months because of the interviews you did and what have you, and of course, the Tom King series is putting some focus on Captain Atom, although that's in a different arguably a different continuity in its Black Label. He's a ridiculously powerful character. This story wouldn't quite have the gravitas if the powers that were lost was Black Canary's sonic cry, like whoop de doo, or maybe somebody just suddenly knew how to do martial arts. No, this suddenly somebody's got the power of the atom, and as the two Atoms, Ryan Shoy and Ray Palmer, say in their discussion, they're concerned that suddenly a couple kids in the middle of nowhere could manifest the powers of, like Brainiac level or Dark Side level powers, all grounded in the power of the atom. Because when you think about it, the power of the atom is, limitless, really, depending, just who the hell knows? It's a wild card, and it's a dangerous wild card. And what an interesting array of writers, like that Ryan Parrott and John Ridley. I would not have put those two writers together. And even Mike Perkins on the art. What a wonderful surprise, because I'm so used to seeing Mike Perkins with that other Michael doing Swamp
Mike
Thing. And
Spicer.
yeah, Mike Spicer. Yeah, Mike Spicer, I think. But to have Mike Perkins do the art here, it really works well, because Mike Perkins, he's bringing all that ability he has to draw the green and to draw out nature. He's bringing it. You really get a sense of he's really good at drawing electricity and conveying the power of the atom, conveying a more scientific sort of tone and feel to the art. It works really well, particularly in the scenes where Nathaniel Atom, who's Captain Atom, is being sort of experimented upon. He's lost his powers, and Ryan Shoy and Ray Palmer are trying to figure out, maybe where his powers went, to trace it, and the kids or the people that are affected, to acquire them. But I also like the themes that John Ridley and Ryan Parrott introduce. For example, I mean, I'm thinking to myself, well, you know what? Superheroes sort of pop up every now and then, but they're not generally kind of hunted. To me, there's almost like a hunting field. They're hunting down these kids that are acquiring these powers. I understand that their intentions are noble, because they don't want these kids to lose control of their powers and do wrong. But there's definitely it's got a little bit of an X-Men vibe here, a little bit of a mutant vibe to it, but in a good way, with a sort of a DC sense of sensibility with it. And I think it works really well. And I really like the sort of adult approach and very, very real world approach that is being taken with it, especially with Captain Atom. And I hope that some of those issues and themes that you talked about in your interviews and we talked about here, I hope that they're going to be explored as this series continues.
Yeah, there's a variant cover. I think it's an open to order. It's not a ratio, by Steven Segovia, that has Captain Atom. It looks like he's in pain. He's like throwing his arms back, and there's like a nuclear explosion. And I think there's even a foil version of that. It's just so good, so good. Which I didn't order that cover. I'm gonna have to try to see if I can pick it up at my LCS. But all right, up next we have Batgirl. We're up to issue number 3. This is not in my top 5, but it's on Rocky's. Tate Bromball is the writer. Takeshi Miyazawa is the artist. Mike Spicer, the aforementioned Mike Spicer, on colors. Tom Napolitano on letters. It's Mother, part 3 of 6. So I'll let you go first, Rocky.
Yeah, first, I'm embarrassed asking this. Is Tate a man or a woman?
It's a man.
It's a man? Okay, good. So I won't screw that up, because I may have screwed it up last time. But what I the reason why this is on my list, I'm a huge bad Cassandra Cain fan, and I'm a huge Lady Shiva fan. And Tate Brombell does a really good job of continuing to explore the very sort of complex relationship between Lady Shiva and Cassandra Cain. And what I like about it was what's interesting and different, uh, fans of Lady Shiva were a many varied lot. You could have two diehard fans of Lady Shiva that vehemently disagree on the character and certain when you get into the weeds of how the character should be portrayed. Because there was a time when Lady Shiva was more of a mysterious character, and I kind of preferred her that way. I 25 years ago during Batgirl's initial run, I always thought of Lady Shiva as sort of like almost like the Wolverine of the DC universe, very mysterious. Wolverine's not mysterious anymore, but there was a time when he was. And I thought that is she a hero? Is she a villain? What is she? Well, Tate Brombell gives us a little bit of both here, and this House of Shiva that that exists. They worship Lady Shiva, but Shiva is portrayed. Tate Brombell does a good job of saying that balancing the many sides of Lady Shiva. She is both a destroyer and a healer. And in the House of Shiva, if you're trained, if your particular talents lie in being a very good fighter, destroying things, then you're a destroyer. But if you're a healer, then you become a healer. Lady Shiva is good at both those things, but she also has acquired throughout her lifetime an extraordinary eclectic array of both an odd clientele of an odd group of people that both love her and hate her. She's got enemies. She's got allies and enemies from many different quarters. And since they have this group of mysterious ninjas that are going after them, and particular Cassandra Cain, I really like how this is really a character journey for Cassandra, because Cassandra she started to develop a family with the Bat family, and she in her mind she's abandoned a relationship with her mother. And I like how Tate Brombell has forced Cassandra Cain to rethink her relationship with her mother. She thinks she knows her mother. She thinks blindly that her mother is just a killer, but she's far more complex than that. And Tate Brombell does a good job of giving us aspects of that complexity and that relationship. And a shout out at the end. There's an appearance because Lady Shiva they need allies in their in if they're going to battle these mysterious ninjas. And I see someone at the end. I see Nisa Al Ghul shows up at the end. And the last time I saw Nisa Al Ghul, she was killed at the end. One of my favorite series was by Greg Rucka called Death and the Maidens. And Nisa is one of the daughters of Ra's al Ghul, one of the other daughters, not Talia, but another daughter. And I thought she was killed in that series, but apparently she's alive, and she shows up at the end. And all these, I love this. These are all sort of the mysterious sort of characters that we don't see enough of. And this is what I love about this series. And I'm really curious to see how this is going forward. This is having uncomfortable allies. This is exactly what I expect from Lady Shiva. Just when you think, Lady Shiva, she's both good and bad. She's a destroyer and a healer. And I love the fact that Tate Brombell, he's doing a really good job of that balancing act and forcing Cassandra Cain to sort of rethink the way she does things, even forcing her to speak. Lady Shiva telling her to speak. No, use words, she says, not your language. Tell me how you feel. Use the words. And he gets these characters, and how Lady Shiva holds her daughter accountable, but is also mindful of Cassandra Cain's of another character's advice that Lady Shiva received last issue, and that is, to be forceful, but at the same time let go, and sort of like trying to hold water in your palm of your hand. If you squeeze, you lose the water, but if you relax your hand, the water stays in your palm, in your cupped pound. But in any event, I thought this was excellent. I thought it was very well done. I think the character work, especially for longtime Cassandra Cain fans like myself, I thought it was very subtle and very effective. What about yourself?
Well, this didn't make my top five. My notes say I don't have a whole lot of notes here, but my first note says Lady Shiva is a piece of shit. Uh, and I thought the art worked really well and the color worked really well also. And so I thought it was interesting. You know, I'm taking these notes as I'm reading, and so I get it right. Like it's almost like Tate sets it up for her to come across as really a scumbag, and then tries to redeem her a little bit in a way by saying, "Oh, but she's established this house of Shiva, and they're out there looking after the little guy and helping the less fortunate and the people that are poor and whatever." I don't buy it. I think Lady Shiva is what she is, and I think she's a piece of crap. Like the way she treats her daughter, the way she talks to her in the beginning, like she has no business even having a daughter. I don't blame Cassandra Cain at all for not wanting anything to do with her. Like, yes, you're the biological mother of Cassandra Cain, but that's the only way that you're her mother at all. You don't, you weren't there for her. You've never been there for her. You don't deserve to have a relationship with her at all. Like, I just can't, like, I get that she's one of your favorite characters, but I can't stand her. Like she's not up to the level of like Joker or Amanda Waller, but she's probably in my top five like least liked characters. Like I
Oh
think
wow.
she has no redeeming qualities. I don't find her particularly interesting. And if I never read another Lady Shiva story, I'd be perfectly fine with it. Because to me, it's not enjoyable to read a story that has a character that's so unlikable. She's just completely unlikable to me. And so to read this, to read about her and the way that she does, and I get it. Sometimes you can there can be interest there. When somebody says the things that you would never say or what have you, you kind of you can root for them. It's was a movie I watched recently, like Batter Santa, right, with Billy Bob Thornton. He's such a despicable human being, so much so that you almost kind of root for him because you just never know what the guy's going to do next. It's like watching a train wreck, right? So I get that there are people that are really unlikable that you can be engaged in watching a story or reading a story about them. That's not Lady Shiva for me. She's just unlikable, and I don't want to be exposed to her. Now, all that being said, what Tame Bromwell's doing with Cassandra Cain is interesting because this isn't a Lady Shiva story in my mind. This is really a Cassandra Cain story. Although this issue is a little bit less focused on her, it's almost like some context and giving Cassandra Cain background into what Lady Shiva has been doing, and it doesn't really make sense that she has. You mentioned they worship her. I don't know that I would use that word. They definitely revere her and they respect her. But for her part, I will give Lady Shiva some credit. She's not saying that she deserves to be worshipped and all these people should be bowing down for her or whatever. So it's interesting that she's got this almost like this cult following, this House of Shiva members that they're giving reverence to her name because again I don't feel it's earned and I don't feel it's deserved. But again, I don't think Lady Shiva thinks that it's earned or deserved either. And it's almost like she just tolerates it because there is some good that comes out of it. And it's weird because it's a little incongruous to me with how I perceive the character, but maybe that's just me. That Lady Shiva's never seemed to care about anybody but herself. Certainly, she hasn't never cared about Cassandra Cain. So why does she care about these followers or what these followers are doing? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but maybe Tate Bromwell will explain it at some point. But setting all that aside, this ranks really low on my list in terms of ranking the 11 books that come out this week. But it's mostly just because I don't like Lady Shiva. As far as the art goes, I was worried because I knew Miyakawa's work from that series he does over at Boom with Greg Pak, Mech Cadet U, and that's a very different, almost anime style, very youthful, almost juvenile. And so I was worried that this was going to be that. It's not at all. It's much more traditionally super heroic and much more adult style, much more almost similar to a DC House style. I think the colors work really well. It's paced really well. The fight scenes are amazing. So visually, it's very strong. But yeah, it's my bias that I rank this so low that I just don't care for Lady Shiva. So I'll be curious to see how Tate Bromwell brings it home for this first arc, and if he can not necessarily change my mind, but pull the book up in ranking, my personal rankings, just based on the strength of the story. Because he it's not, and I guarantee Tate doesn't care about my ranking is, but if he can pull it up, that just shows that he's doing a fantastic job. Because despite me disliking Lady Shiva, if this ranks high for me, that's just a testament to how well he's doing. So, all right. Up next, it's actually the book that I would rank last in my rankings. I really struggle with this book, and it's mostly due to the art. It's Batman Full Moon, Book 3. It's by writer Rodney Barnes. Steven Subic handles the art, Russ Wooten on letters. It's just, the art is just not my style. There's nothing about the art that I like. It is really a struggle, especially the faces. Everybody has like these beady little eyes. I struggle to understand what's going on in the story because of the art. The backgrounds don't bring anything to it. Um, yeah, and the story, it's a little tropey. Batman as a werewolf. There's not anything in the story that's really a hook that can bring me in. And when the art is sort of actively making me not want to read it just makes the story, like, the story's gonna have to be really good with this art for me to enjoy it, and it's just not there. So I almost didn't read it this week because I disliked the first two issues, and I like this one even less than the first two. So I I might not read it. It's just not for me. I don't have anything positive to say. So why am I talking about it? But anything to add, Rocky?
Well, I'm a little bit. I'm more positive than you, only because I'm a sucker for. I know you've repeatedly said that you're not a big fan. You're sick and tired of Catwoman and Batman getting together because they're always getting together. And
Yeah.
I like any story that hints at Satana and Bruce Wayne. I just kind of like. So,
Yeah, I
and that's
do.
what this is.
I definitely prefer Zatanna and Batman together over Selina and
Yeah.
Batman. That's true.
And Rodney Barnes does a good job of there's a love triangle going on here. It's as much a love triangle as you can get when you got Batman and John Constantine and Zatanna. So I'll grant you, it's not not. None of those three are what I would call necessarily the romantic type, with apologies to Zatanna, but it's I like the fact that Bruce Wayne is still struggling with him being a werewolf himself. He's cursed by with the werewolf curse, and he's got to basically travel into a different realm with Satana to battle that curse and to overcome it. And John Constantine actually gives him some silver bullets. And at one point, and when he does that, Bruce Wayne actually says, "Well, this is one way to are you trying to say something? That's one way to get rid of me, to break up me and Zatanna." And but clearly, John Constantine, this is a dangerous thing, and giving Bruce Wayne silver bullets, so maybe he can kill himself if he can't. He knows that Bruce Wayne's the type of guy that would kill himself if he can't cure the curse. That's exactly what he'll do. So. The story, notwithstanding the art, and I agree with you. Sometimes the art gets a little bit beady and what have you, but obviously the art is very, very intentional that way. It's meant to have a horrific side to it. Uh, Although, and I will say that the art doesn't do the art. I wish Zatanna was just a little sexier. The art doesn't necessarily do the those character moments as much justice as I think as they deserve. But it's still, there's a story here to be had, and you know it's still, I'm still going to check it out because I'm curious as hell to see what happens between Zatanna and Batman. Even though I could probably guess, it's maybe a little tropey, but I enjoyed aspects of this for what it's worth. So
Yeah,
you're on
yeah,
mute. Sorry.
yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, I forgot. I'm glad you pointed out the Zatanna Batman relationship. Yeah, that might be the one redeeming quality. I don't know if it's enough to get me to read the next issue, but I guess we'll see. All right, up next we have Two Face. This was in both of our top five, written by Christian Ward. We have art by Fabio Veras, colors by Ivan Placencia, and letters by Hassan Otsman Elahal. The Deadly Divorce of the King and Queen of Hearts. And what I really enjoyed about this issue is it really is leaning into the fact that this is almost a procedural type book that Christian Ward is writing. He mentioned Perry Mason to me, like Two Face is the Perry Mason of the criminal underworld here in Gotham, with this white court, and his assistant. I guess you'd call her his investigator, right? So I really like what's going on here. I like that that this white church of the Gotham underworld, they're trying to, in a way, police themselves, keep Batman from getting involved. make sure things don't go too crazy. It seems very realistic to me. It seems like if you did have an underworld, you did have a Gotham City, and they were that involved, and there was that many powerful people vying for control over various parts, that they would try to do that. They would try to make sure that nobody stepped too far out of bounds, and got the attention of the authorities in a greater manner, so that there would be more focus on them. So all that makes sense, like having the white church as this court of, I don't want to say court of law, court of crime, I guess you would say. All that makes a lot of sense. Learning more about Two-Face's assistant, that was interesting. Seeing Two-Face himself and how Harvey Dent is really trying to evolve is interesting as well. He's pretty tropey in a way. The whole idea of the two sides of man, the good and the evil, and he decides things with a coin, and his face is, he's a two-face. He's half his face is unscarred, the other half is, horribly scarred, and that struggle within himself. It's been explored ad nauseum at this point, so it's kind of tough to give us something new in that realm, but it looks like Christian Ward may be on to something here. Again, not the most original, with Harvey basically imprisoning the two-faced side of himself in his own mind, in a prison of his own making, and also the idea that even before he was scarred on the outside, that two-faced persona already existed, is interesting as well. But I really like what's going on here. I thought the art was really strong. I've never been that interested in Two-Face as a character before, but I am now. I'm interested now, so I think that's probably a pretty high compliment that I can pay to Christian Ward. He's doing a fantastic job. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, the ultimate one of the interesting revelations here is that there is a person who's yet unrevealed who wants to destroy Harvey Dent because Harvey Dent took everything from him, and he's created the Shadow Hand, consisting of the White Rabbit, Die, a character called Doubt, Jaina Hudson, the White Rabbit, and Falseface. And we reviewed the character Doubt. Appeared in Batman Brave and the Bold, I think. Didn't we review an issue that had Doubt? It wasn't that character that I thought was so good, and you told me the creator teased that he was going to come back in a
Yeah,
series. And so it's really great to see him here. I will say I sort of thought it was comical, Rex and Regina Quintain, of course, them being the King and Queen of Hearts. I am a family law lawyer by occupation, and I say that only because I do a lot of prenups, and I've never ever seen a prenup where you can actually kill your spouse if they cheat on you. I don't know if that's enforceable, but apparently it is in the white church, which I think is really cool. And it's hilarious that Rex Quintain is very, very concerned. I mean, uh, it's crazy. He loves his psychotic wife. His wife will absolutely kill him if he's guilty of being unfaithful to him. She will kill him. And yet there was even a time while they're investigating and through the course of this story where Rex Quintain, even before it was established that he was innocent, he was willing to protect his wife, who uh, who could very well end up be the person that kills him. But it's perfectly allowable in the white church, in the court ran by Two-Face or whatever. But in any event, I thought it was very good, and I like the mind prison that I like that Christian Ward has created more complexity and brought some more nuance and an interesting take on the interior in the mindset of Harvey Dent. It's not just black and white. In the mind prison, where his Two-Face persona is in. There's literally all the characters from Two-Face's and Harvey Dent's life are in that mind prison as well. And so there's a lot of things that go on, and there's a warden that sort of that so Harvey Dent's mind is sort of like a steel trap, and he thinks that this steel trap, this mind prison, that his Two-Face persona can't escape from it. But we know there's hints that that's not going to be the case. Meanwhile, you got this person that's after Harvey Dent, and he's got his shadow hand that is willing to go above and beyond to try to take Two-Face out. I think this is really inspired, and I think Christian Ward has taken this. This isn't, dare I say it, this isn't dual. There isn't a duality here. This isn't black and white. This is a multifaceted story that has many different moving parts. It's got characters with different motivations, and even his new sidekick I find very interesting. So I'm on board on this, and I'm buying the physical copies, and I really like the art as well. I like the artistic approach, and I particularly love the cover. It was pretty good too. Trial Separation is such a great title
Yeah.
for the story. It's well done. It was near the top this week for me. I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah. Next book also makes both of our top fives. It's Batman number 156 by. Actually, no, I take that back. It didn't make your top five. But regardless, it's written by Chip Zdarsky, Tony Daniel on art, Tomei Morey handles the colors, Clayton Cowell on letters. Um, since the end of the failsafe arc, which was obviously ended up being, I think, even a bigger story than Zdarsky intended, because he ended up being, part of the one of the three big bads of absolute power, along with Amanda Waller and Brainiac Queen. Um, so I think that ended up being a bigger story. But even before that, he was a very powerful villain, a very big threat, formidable threat for Batman. Ever since the end of that, the Batman book has felt a little lighter. It hasn't felt so morose, I guess you'd say. But Batman is still dealing with some really big threats here with what the Court of Owls is doing behind the scenes, with what Edward Nigma is doing behind the scenes, with people within Wayne Tech, kind of betraying him, this brother showing up, and his legacy being threatened. Wayne Tech's going to be, maybe hostile takeover, or he's got to give up some of his shares to this brother or whatever. And on top of that, we have this Commander Star, who seems to be a hero of the people and yet doing horrible, despicable things. You still have Vandal Savage as a commissioner, so a lot of moving parts. It's not that it's a bright sunny day for Batman. There's still a lot of things going on, and there's still plenty of challenges. But the book doesn't feel as serious as it did during the failsafe run, and I really appreciate that. So the Tony Daniel art, I mean, Tony Daniel's done tons of Batman work over the years. He did a bunch of issues during the Tom King run. But what's interesting is I thought the art here, it didn't quite look like Tony Daniel. Like what I read the credits and I knew it was him, so I could recognize it. But
Yeah.
I don't know if I just turned to a particular page. Like typically, I'm like, oh yeah, that's Tony Daniel. I might have struggled had I not known ahead of time. I couldn't do that like thought experiment because I already knew it was him. But it just, I don't know. There's something about it that looks a little bit different to me than what Daniel's art usually looks like. And it's not the color artist, because he's worked with Tomei Morey a lot. Morey did most of the, if not all of the color work on the Noctera series that Tony Daniel did over at Image with Scott Snyder. So yeah, it's not to say the art's bad, and there's certainly times, poses, panels where I'm like, oh yeah, that's Tony Daniel. But I don't know, there's something a little bit different about it. It looked a little softer to me, which is fine. I think it worked for the story. But I just something that I noticed, so I wanted to comment on. So kind of curious there if Tony did anything slightly different. Um, at the end of this issue, we do find out that this Commander Star, or whatever his name um, is actually KG Beast. It's actually the return of KG Beast, which is super interesting to me. KG Beast is a character that's always fascinated me from the first time that he showed up. He does seem like such a foil for Batman. Showed up right at the end of the Cold War. This Russian assassin or whatever, Soviet, I guess, back then, now Russian. Um, he's always been missing a hand since early on in that first 4-issue series, where he had to cut off his own hand to escape Batman. I mean, gorgeous Jim Aparo art, that 10 Nights of the Beast. I think Jim Starlin wrote it. It's classic stuff. But ever since then, he hasn't had it. So does he have a prosthetic hand here? I'm not sure how he's back or whatever. Supposedly he was killed. Um, Actually, in an issue I think that was drawn by Tony Daniel at the end of the Tom King run. So curious to see how he's back. It was certainly an interesting moment when Batman figures it out. It clicks. It's like, oh my God, it's the KGBs, because this Leonid character, who is currently the head of the Court of Owls, we find out has been he's been playing a role. He's been acting like he's subservient to Edward Nigma, although he's in charge of the Court of Owls, but really he's been playing Nigma all along, which is really interesting because as tropey as Edward Nigma can be, always wanting to set up puzzles or whatever, we know he's really intelligent. So for somebody to fool him, and probably his arrogance got the better of him. You know, Enigma just assumed that this Leonid was sort of a meathead and not as smart as him. Um, and yeah, come to find out, Leonid was really manipulating Edward Nygma all along to get some encryption code so that the Russian, I guess the Russian government, Russian mob, somebody over there in the East would be able to decrypt secret messages and encrypted information and data and what have you. So kind of interesting what a world we live in, right, Rocky? We're talking it's 2025. Like it used to always be, oh, they're after the money, they want to steal the gold or whatever. Now in 2025, yeah, you can. This completely makes sense that somebody would be just stealing some computer code because that's more valuable, almost priceless when it comes to manipulating world markets and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, really interesting for Zdarsky to be going out this way with what feels like a really fun classic Batman story, but it doesn't have that same weightiness that the failsafe, that almost sense of despair that the failsafe story had, where it was like Batman was already defeated. He had, it was hopeless. There's no sense of hopelessness here. Yes, it's a challenge. Yes, there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of things Batman's having to deal with, but you get the sense that he's going to prevail, right? Like these are things that he can handle. He's not like physically overmatched by this robot that can do anything. Which again, I mean, he defeated Failsafe, but it never felt like he had a chance. It just the whole story just had this sense that he was defeated before he got started. I didn't care for that feeling of that hopelessness, but this feels much more like what I would want out of a Batman story from Zdarsky, which is a little uh, I don't want to say disappointing, but I guess a little ironic would be the word, because this is his last arc. He's leaving so that Jeff Loeb and Jim Lee can come on and give us another Hush story.
Yeah.
So yeah, interesting. Anyway,
Yeah,
what'd you think of it?
I did like it, even though I never mentioned it in my top five. It could have been in my top five. I enjoyed this. There's no question that I feel Chip Zdarsky, he would have had, if he'd have had some more issues to work with, this story could have been more flushed out and developed more. Because, like for example, I think this is an entertaining story. It's very well done. It's very well crafted. It's easy to follow. There's character work for Commissioner Gordon. There's a resolution between him and he was having an affair with the mayor's wife. There's some fallout from that, which works well. Uh, I am where I'm a little disappointed, and I can't say this is really Chip's fault, but I was hoping that this was going to be an elevation of the Riddler. But the Riddler, because I thought that after being experimented on and manipulated by Dr. Capdio, I thought the Riddler was going to be elevated a little bit more in terms of his intelligence and his ability to manipulate, and maybe not quite so Riddler focused, like in terms of riddles, saying riddles all the time. But Edward Nygma ends up being just the same old Edward Nygma, and even very foolishly, he's manipulated by Leonard Cull. That after Dr. Capdio, I thought made him realize his potential, and he's manipulated by just a Russian. I just thought that didn't quite work well, unless Riddler is just, once again, maybe he's just intentionally sort of playing a fool, but he didn't even realize that he was letting the Russians get a hold of cryptography codes that could lead to nuclear Armageddon. I mean, he was, Batman seemed to, had to spell it out for him, and I thought I didn't think Edward Nygma, that's sort of like the old Riddler, who's sort of like so focused on the riddles that he doesn't see the forest because of the trees, and that sort of surprised me, because I thought Chip Zdarsky was going out of his way to elevate the Riddler at the end of that Dr. Capdio sort of Joker origin 3-issue story, but I guess he wasn't, and it's still good. It's still a good story, but I do believe that there's a little bit of disappointment there. Even the character that betrayed Bruce Wayne, Rowan, Bruce Wayne seems to have forgiven her rather handily here. So it's a very convenient wrap up all around, and a little bit surprising, but there is some satisfaction to this, because it does, in 4 issues, I think this is like 4 or 5 issues long. Yeah, I think it's well done. It's an easy read, and it'll make for a great read and trade. And I think I think that Chip Zdarsky's Batman run is going to be maybe more appreciated in the long run because he's taken some heavy criticism over his run because it's had some high. The highs have been for me have been pretty high, and then the lows have been pretty low. But all in all, I think it. I enjoyed the way this ended overall. Notwithstanding my Riddler issue.
Well, I mean, this is not the end? There's
Well,
still more
yeah,
to come, right?
I know he's gonna fight KG Beast, and I
Right.
think that's. I mean, and that's like you said. That's the other thing. How is that gonna end? Well, we know he's gonna defeat the KG Beast, and then we're gonna go. Are we gonna go into the Jim Lee, Jeff Loeb Hush sequel then after that?
Yeah, 158. So
Yeah,
there's one issue left. 157 is Zdarsky's last issue. So
yeah.
yeah, one more there, and then then Hush too. So, but yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It's I can't speak to we know this was supposed to come out twice a month, and then they changed it back to monthly. Is this going to be enough time for? I mean, at least Chip knew. He knew ahead of time, like 157, regardless of this what the schedule was, whether they were putting it out twice a month or not. He knew his last issue was going to be 157. That being said, it feels like this could have taken another 2 or 3 issues and been even better. He could have, fleshed it out a little more. We could have gotten maybe some fights between Commander Star, KG Beast, and Batman, where Batman starts to suspect, oh, the fighting style is familiar or what have you. I mean, it is what it is. It's not like Batman's not going to sell, and it's not like a Hush too, especially. But I just wish, I don't know. I wish Starsky had a little longer because again, I mean, he had a good run, like 2 years, but so much of it was, first 3 quarters of it was the fail safe, which I didn't really enjoy. Now I'm really enjoying it, and he's moving off the book. So, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it's really easy. You say he's had some highs and lows. I'm sure you can guess what my low would be.
Well,
I've talked about it so many times. But other than that moment, and it's not like the failsafe story was bad by any stretch. It was exciting, and the design was cool, and Jorge Jimenez's art was dynamic, whatever. And I'm going to look back fondly on this Chip Zdarsky run of Batman, despite that one moment that I just thought was completely ridiculous.
the
Reference it
moon.
all the time. The moon, no doubt, ridiculous. All right, let's move on. Up next, also not in either of our top five, but Birds of Prey number 17 from writer Kelly Thompson, Sammy Basri on art, Vicente Cifuentes on inks, Adriana Lucas on colors, Clayton Cowell on letters. It's not in our top five, so I'm not going to spend a whole heck of a lot of time on this. But what I do want to say about it is, for me, it's the art that is letting this down. Like, this was a fun story, maybe not the most memorable. And I find the line work to be pretty good. But from the beginning of this book, I don't know whose decision or whatever to use this sort of muted color palette um, or this pastel color palette. The colors have never worked for me in this book. And it just goes to show that you need more than just a good story and more than just good line work. You need it all to come together, and it just has not come together for me, and it's really disappointing. I love Kelly Thompson. I think she's so talented, but I just can't get past the color choices in this story. It pulls me out of the story constantly. Like, I don't understand why this whole book is pink. I don't get it, and it's not like I haven't seen these creators do other work that's really good where it's not this pastel looking color. I don't get it. It's just not working for me. It's almost like I want this entire series to be redone with like more of a traditional DC style, and I probably would be like singing the praises of this book, but that's not what we have. This is what we have, and it doesn't work for me. So I don't know if you have anything to add, Rocky.
Well, I would add that I'm going to be more harsh on the story. I just find these stories to be very one dimensional. Like I don't find the stories to be all that. They're literally the birds of prey just go in. Cassandra Cain gets caught, and then they go in and they rescue her. And there's really no. I I don't really feel that there's a lot of character moments. I don't think there's a lot of character development. It's very plot driven, very predictable. I don't. It's just it's just kind of meh. It's just kind of meh. I didn't mind the art. I'm less maybe I have less issues with the art. I just, it's funny. I remember Gail Simone's Birds of Prey, where there was just like comical, more hilarious character moments, and there just seems to be things of more consequence. There's just no consequence here, and there's even a character from the first arc that shows up here, and it just doesn't. It just never has felt like there's a lot of gravitas to anything, and maybe that's just me, but but it's just because it's a lot of people love this. A lot of people love this series. We're actually maybe probably going to be in the minority again, and
Yeah.
not putting this in our top five. There's a lot. I absolutely love it, and all the power to it. I mean, uh, but it's just not really hitting, and maybe it's because the competition is so great. I mean, DC 2 years ago, this would have probably been in my top five, but not anymore. But she's doing a bang up job on Absolute Wonder Woman, which is more entertaining for me, and I'm still loving her independent work. I still subscribe to her Substack, and I still love Kelly Thompson, and I'm still a Birds of Prey fan, and we'll see. I mean, hopefully at some point in maybe the next story arc, this will hit our top five.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with what you're saying. And I enjoyed the beginning of this arc. But yeah, maybe it didn't end as strongly as it began because this was an arc that brought back the feel of them as kind of an espionage organization, which I think that's where the Birds of Prey really excel.
Mm-hmm.
But all I would say is when you talk about it not landing, it doesn't land for me either. And I think no gravitas. I think that's the colors. I think the colors are not in service to the story to give it more weight. But I don't know. Maybe that's just working, or not working for me. But anyway, let's move on. Another book in both of our top five. Absolute Superman #3 from writer Jason Aaron, Rafa Sandoval on art, Ulysses Areola on colors, and Becca Carey on letters. I'll let you go first. Give us your thoughts on this.
Well, I joked before. I think when we reviewed Absolute Batman issue 3, I think I joked, or I was serious. I said every time I reviewed an issue of Absolute Batman, it's my new number one absolute title. Then I read Absolute Superman, and that's my favorite. Uh, I'm loving this. This is Jason Aaron just does just a bang up job. It's very interesting to me that there's I'm surprised by there's a it seems to be a not insignificant number of people out there that are somewhat critical of Absolute Superman. I think this is competing with Absolute Batman for the best, uh, for the absolute best of the absolute titles. I love what Jason Aaron is doing for the Superman origin. This feels more complex and more rich and more interesting. An origin for Superman than it I think has ever existed. Quite frankly, this is the best iteration. This is the most interesting I've ever enjoyed origin story for a Superman iteration, and just the whole idea of an older the whole idea of an older Kal-El knowing his parents, growing up with him in Krypton, with Krypto, and playing a significant role in the history of Krypton, playing a significant role in in a series of events that leads to the destruction of Krypton. We're going to be at the end of issue 3 here, and we still don't have the destruction of Krypton, and I love it. I love it. This isn't something where it's just presumed it's the same origin of Superman. No, 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 not at all. Jason Aaron took the challenge up, and this is what I wish. My criticism, Absolute Wonder Woman, to the degree I'm criticizing that, I don't find it to be as original as it could be in terms of the origin of Wonder Woman, other than window dressing. This is genuinely a different Superman with a different upbringing, with a different relationship with his original parents. We've got hints here. He's got a very different relationship with uh, Martha Kent. That's hinted at the end of this issue. The origin, the fact that the elites of Krypton are in fact aware that of Krypton's fate, and they're creating their own ships. And so Jason Aaron is introducing clearly there's a class war going on. It's a caste system of government where there's the working class is sort of shunned, and they're being deprived of the truth of what the fate of Krypton is. And Jor-El and Lara are sort of like the heroes, and Kal himself, a young Kal-El, is someone who is a rebel himself. Even as a student, he prefers to speak in words and as opposed to utilizing the technology. And he's sort of a rebel himself. There's so many little things. There's so many details that Jason Aaron gives, setting apart why Jor-El and Laura are different, why Kal-El is different. He's, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And Kal-El he is the hero of this story, but he gets it from his parents. And just I love how there's a scene where Laura has to go and rescue Jor-El, who's detained, and she's kick-ass. He's got a kick-ass mom. He's got a kick-ass dad. And the art by Rafael Sandoval is absolutely fantastic. You can, when you see a young Kal-El's mother, Laura, she looks amazing. No wonder Superman, Absolute Superman, is going to be attracted to Absolute Lois Lane, because his mother and Lois Lane have a lot in common. The only difference is the length of their hair, almost. Well, and obvious genetics. But I just really, I thoroughly love, I enjoy this, and I enjoy it on a level that is different than Absolute Batman. I'm loving Absolute Batman, but this is just this feels unique. This feels like Superman, but it feels genuinely new, because I don't know. I mean, it's incredible. It's like, I know Krypton's going to explode. Of course it is. But I'm still curious as to how the hell we're going to get there. And I'm curious to know, maybe Jor-El does survive. Maybe Laura survives. Maybe it's more than just, like, I'm questioning all these assumptions I'm making, and I just don't know. And I'm excited what the answer is. And the art's fantastic. And the color work is incredible. I mean, this is very impressive stuff. Rafael Sandoval, Ariel on the colors. The colors are just incredible. Uh, the way that we're getting a feel for Krypton, as it's clearly the planet is dying, and it's obvious. And it's what's great about it is that we don't need to be told by any character, any Kryptonian, that Krypton is dying. We see it in the art, and we see it and it's told in a visually stunning way, with almost what I'm assuming is sort of what will become kryptonite gas sort of leaking from the planets, and the dead fish and the dead animals, as and we're experiencing that and observing that, just like Jor-El, Laura, and a young Kal-El is experiencing that as well. And just as the plot moves forward, and he's still going to school, and he's interacting with the elites, and the revelations that occur, and it's just it's so well done. And it's going to be really easy to do. I mean, it's probably the best of the week for me. I absolutely love this. I can't. I'm sitting here, and I really would like to be able to say something that bothers me about this story, but there isn't. I love every aspect of it. I love it. I mean, call me a shill, but I mean, I absolutely love Absolute Superman. I love every aspect of this story, and the art's fantastic. This is, if I had to rank this out of 10, I mean, should I go 9.9 because I don't want to give something a perfect 10? I just love this, and it's issue after issue after issue. It just keeps it keeps getting better, and I love this. What about yourself?
Yeah, dare I say this could be the best issue so far of this series, which is saying something because the first issue completely blew me away. I've read it and read it and reread it and reread it. Second issue focused on Lois, was maybe a step down from that first issue, and now with issue 3, we're back up to heights that we haven't gotten to with the story before. You completely nailed it when you said, this is a Kal-El, this is an origin story for Superman in such a way that we've never gotten before, in terms of Cal's older. He gets a chance to know his parents. Every iteration of Superman origin story, yes, his parents loved him. Yes, they sacrificed for him. They built a spaceship so they could launch him away from the doomed planet of Krypton so that he would survive. Obviously, there's love there and there's caring, but it's sort of an obligatory love in a way, right? Like when you're a parent and you have a kid, you have a baby. Yes, you love that baby. It's a part of you. It's a part of your significant other, and you hope that there's a bond there. But you love the baby because it's your baby, right? You're sort of responsible for it, bringing life into the world. You don't care for the baby because of the person it is. because it doesn't have a personality yet. It hasn't started becoming a person and learning and growing and evolving, right? You just don't. You haven't had that opportunity. And as the child grows and your influences in the way you raise it, and your significant others' influences in the way that they help you raise it, the child, affect that child and affect how their personality develops, and it affects the person that they become. And you hope that there's a even stronger bond there because your values are passed along and you see them reflected in your child, right? That's some of what we're getting here. We're seeing a Kal-El who knows right from wrong in a way that the class system of Krypton doesn't necessarily acknowledge, right? We're seeing a Kal that wants to think for himself. Oh, I don't want to use the scientific computer system to generate reports and just regurgitate what I've been told. I want to use my own words. And his parents encourage that, even though it goes against the quote unquote establishment. That's interesting. That's something we've never gotten the opportunity to have before. This is a Jor-El and a Laura that we've never gotten the opportunity to see spend time with an older Kal-El where we can see that they're proud of him, because he's not Superman yet. He doesn't have any superpowers on Krypton, but just the values that he has, right? What he wants to fight for. You mentioned them all being rebels, like what he thinks is the difference between right and wrong. It's all influenced by the kick-ass Jor-El and Laura, to use your words, that we have here. You can understand why Kal is the person that he is, even though he's maybe 8 or 9 here. You can completely understand why he values what he values, why he thinks what he thinks, why he has this tendency to want to get the truth out there, already planting roots for him becoming a reporter eventually. I mean, this is a new version of Superman. Probably get a new version of Clark Kent. Will we get a Daily Planet? Will he become a reporter? That all remains to be seen. But you can see why he would want to do that, because already that's his predilection from what we've seen here with how he wants to get the news out there. And he even sort of spills the beans, as it were, because when Laura goes to rescue Jor-El from the Science Council, once Jor-El goes in there and says, hey, guess what's happening? Planet's going to explode. Turns out the Science Council already knew. Turns out they were building ships in secret, only to rescue the upper class of Krypton and leave all the working class there to die. Like, how despicable is that? But when Kal-El finds this out, he broadcasts it. He puts it out there. He's already, leaning into those reporters' instincts to get the truth out there. Everybody deserves to know the truth and understand what this ruling Science Council is up to. That is just so amazing, and shows again the values that his parents have instilled in him, and the fact that we get to see the interactions between him and his parents is amazing. I tend to agree with you. This is probably the best origin, maybe the best version of Superman. Like, I can't believe it. Superman's been around for almost 100 years, and we're getting the best version of Superman in 2024, 2025. What a tribute to Jason Aaron. And I'm sure Jason would push back on that. He'd say, I'm just taking ideas that others have built. I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, and rightly so. So many people have contributed to the mythos and what have you, but the fact that he's been willing to throw out so much, but take the building blocks. And I go back to that conversation I had with him at San Diego Comic, where he said he was going to throw everything out, but still be true to the core of the character. And as excited as I remember thinking to myself, man, that's going to be really hard to do. And yet he's managed to accomplish that. It's amazing. I agree with you on the art. It's dynamic. It's colorful. It works amazingly well. We see sort of the origins of Soul, this I guess artificial intelligence. Apparently, it was created by Laura. We see the suit that we've seen Kal in on Earth. How he's got the flame hands and the flame boots. We're told that it was his mother's armor. She was always hoped to be an astronaut and travel out in space. Obviously, she's modified it. That's the suit. It's obviously been passed down to Kal and modified to fit him as opposed to her. So we're getting little hints that we've of things that we've already seen on Earth with what we saw in the first issue and the second issue, that they all had their roots back on Krypton. I'm as intrigued as you are to find out, do they survive? Because they didn't just build a one person ship like we've seen in so many different origins of Superman. It was just big enough for him. No, they've built a ship that's large enough to carry what looks to be maybe hundreds of people. Certainly not everybody on Krypton, but a large number. So I'm intrigued. Could Laura and Jor-El still be alive? Could they be out in space? Could they have just dropped Cal on Earth? Like,
Or
man,
other Kryptonians. Could be another.
yeah,
Could be a full fleet of elite Kryptonians flying out there in space somewhere.
yeah, they could be. Maybe Laura and Jor-El got captured by them, or maybe they're out there trying to find them or fight them or whatever, and they've dropped Cal on Earth. Like, that's the thing with what Jason Aaron has done. He's introduced so many new ideas and done it in such a fantastic way that I question everything. Like, is he the only surviving Kryptonian? Could Laura and Jor-El be on Earth? Like, who knows? Who knows? But in Jason Aaron, I trust because he's done such a good job with the story so far. And yeah, the little hint on the last page that um, that he has some relationship to the Kents. You know, she's Martha's in the hospital. Looks like she might be on her deathbed. She's calling out for her son, even though she never had any kids. But there's a picture of what looks to be Cal and her on the table next to her hospital bed. So, you know, is there a connection? Where's Jonathan Kent? Like, we don't know any of this yet. So, but I'm excited to learn. But I'm not in a huge hurry because I love the pacing of the story as well. I think Aaron has done a good job of you know, getting there slowly. Has said multiple times when we've had him on the show about how he wants everybody to enjoy the journey. He doesn't want to be in a hurry to reveal everything yet. So yeah, really just an amazing job. Like, the thing that I keep going back to more than anything is what you caught on to it too, and I kind of wondered how many people will appreciate it. It's the fact that this is an older Kal-El that got to be raised by Jor-El and Laura for a much longer period of time. They got to have an effect on him and influence him. He gets to know them a little bit more. Like, that to me is maybe the best thing. Like, there's so many things to love about this version of Superman, but that might be my favorite thing and maybe the most important thing. The fact that this is without question my favorite version of Jor-El and Laura that we've ever had, and the fact that they get a chance to have influenced Kal-El, and a chance to be a fan. That's like the most tragic thing about Superman when you think about it, because it goes back to what I was saying before. Yeah, you have that love that you feel for your child because it's your baby, but it's not out of choice, right? Because it's a little bit of an obligation. That's your baby. It's a part of you. You've brought life into the world, so you love it. But as our kids grow, you know, we choose to love them because of the people that they become. And this Jor-El and this Laura get the chance to do that, and that's so good. And to see the influence they had on him, and to see how much Kal-El loves them, yeah, that's far and away my favorite thing about this version of Superman, and it's why this might be my favorite version of Superman, and maybe the best version of Superman. So I yeah, I have had people say, oh, I don't really like this version of Absolute Superman, but when I ask them why, they can't articulate why. So I think almost some people, they just want to be contrarian, because I don't see how you say that you're a fan of Superman, because to me that means you're a fan of kind of what he stands for, the ideals, and maybe you're a fan of the type of powers that he has and what have you. But all that still exists. He still has all those same powers and maybe more, and all the other ideals and all the other reasons I would think you would be a fan of Superman, they all exist here to an even greater extent. So yeah, if you are listening to this or watching it on YouTube and you're not liking Absolute Superman, that is completely fine. That's, like what you like and don't like what you don't like. That's fine. But please explain to me. Please explain to me what it is that doesn't work or that you don't like, because I'm genuinely curious. I want to know. Am I missing something? Is there something to dislike here? I don't know. I don't know. So anyway, yeah, I thought it was fantastic. All right,
Yeah.
let's move on. Next book. I don't think it's in either of our top five, but I will say it's in my mind, it was my favorite issue of this series so far. DC Horror presents Creature Commandos 4 by writer David Dalsmalchian, Jesus Horvas on art, Alex Cormus on colors, Ferran Delgado on letters. Not going to spend a lot of time on it, like I said, because it's not in either of our top five, but my notes just say the art is messy and the story's tropey, but it is the best of the series so far. And I imagine if you enjoy the animated show, you're probably digging this. I haven't watched the animated show, so I can't really speak to that. But anything to add, Rocky?
Yeah, well, I really like the Medusa character, and she finally reveals her snake hair in this issue. Uh, General Eiling is he's the guy that has created this Project M, putting all these monsters together. They're the biggest problem they're going to have is the moment they put these monsters into beast mode. It's the problem they have is trying to control all of them, and interestingly enough, I'm still curious as to how Brainiac is the primary villain here. It's a very Das Melchian picks a very interesting villain. You don't. I would almost think it's odd. I think of Brainiac. I think this might be a downgrade for Brainiac fighting the Creature Commandos. On the other hand, let's be blunt. Given the fallout of the House of Brainiac, Brainiac himself probably needs to maybe build himself up again. But he's whatever his plan is here. We're still not entirely sure what his end game, what Brainiac's end game here is, and he certainly seems to not take this monster threat seriously. So I'm really curious to see how that Dalsmalchian is going to have these monsters. And of course, you got the tropey monsters, you got the Frankenstein, you got the werewolf, you got the Dracula, the vampire, etc., etc., and you got the Medusa character. How they all come together, and how they're. I mean, when they go full beast mode, then they kill the good guys too. So this is pretty serious stuff. Meanwhile, we got Satana floating in the background too, making an appearance here or there. So that sort of raises the stakes a bit. So I'm enjoying this series, and I have to admit I've not watched any of the Creature Commandos cartoon. If that's been on, I definitely want to check that out. I've just been reading this comic and I'm enjoying it. I mean, hey, just because it didn't make top five, I mean, it's still a good time to be a DC fan, and I've been enjoying this. And I say again, it has that Bronze Age sort of 1970s little Marvel feel to it. I hope DC's not insulted with me saying that, but I kind of like that callback, and the messiness of the art I think contributes to the tone of the story, so I don't mind that either.
Yeah, I would agree with you about that '70s feel. And what's interesting, David Dastmalchian is an actor, obviously a writer as well. I sort of thought, and he was in the Suicide Squad movie that James Gunn did. I sort of
Oh,
assumed
Aquaman,
he would
yeah.
be one of the voices in the show, but he's not. I looked it up, but there's some other big names. David Harbour plays Frankenstein. Alan Tudyk is Doctor Phosphorus. Frank Grillo is Rick Flag Senior. So yeah, there's definitely names that you would recognize. So, um, but yeah, I'm just not not a not a fan of the Creature Commandos show. I haven't watched it. I haven't watched a lot of the. I don't think I've watched any James Gunn DC stuff. Obviously, I'm looking forward to the Superman movie, but haven't seen his Suicide Squad movie. Haven't
Oh,
seen Peacemaker or any of that stuff. So I'll get to it eventually. Anyway, up next we have Poison Ivy number 29. This one was just outside of our top five. In other weeks, it definitely would have made my top five, but yeah, it was a particularly strong week. But it's written by G. Willow Wilson. We've got Marcio Takara on the art, colors by Arif Prianto, letters by Hassan Atswan Elhau. I think Takara's art is perfect for the story that's being told. It's interesting that this is a new story from those first 24 issues that G. Willow Wilson was kind of telling one big story, but it still has its roots in that story. She's going back and mining events and characters from that. And, I talked about this with G. Willow earlier this year about how Poison Ivy's become such an important character because of what's happening in our world with climate change and what have you. And she's continuing to evolve um, as a character, and that's pretty interesting. So yeah, I definitely enjoy this. And man, I would have been hard pressed to believe you if you told me a couple years ago when the series started that the series was gonna run 29 issues. That's amazing to me. So anything to add?
yeah. Yeah, well, the Gardner shows up in this issue. J. Willow Wilson has Gardner was a character created by James Tynion during his Batman run, and she's a former lover of Poison Ivy. And J. Willow Wilson did a really good job in the first 25 issues, drawing a very sort of a longer story, but one she did a good job sort of revitalizing and revamping Poison Ivy's origin. And part of that origin involved, Jason Woodrow, Alec Holland, and one of the and also the gardener. And so for the Gardener to show up here, and it's kind of predictable that the Gardener would show up to be part of this story, because the Gardener is Poison Ivy is a character where she's more of an anti-hero now, maybe struggling with her morality and her view of the world, and struggling with her role as the embodiment of the green. You know, how is she different than Swamp Thing? We kind of got that in that great one shot Swamp Thing, Poison Ivy Feral Trees, which was really good. And for the Gardener, Gardener is more. She's like Poison Ivy used to be. She's more of a Gardener is more of a genuine eco terrorist, whereas Poison Ivy isn't, she's got more humanity than the Gardener does, despite the fact that they might have been former lovers, but they're friends. But J. Willow Wilson does a good job of showing that there's still some attraction there, but there's still some tension. And the Gardener has her own minions, and she wants to. I think there's a part of the Gardener that might even be jealous of Poison Ivy, and clearly this is going to be building up. This is going to be, dare I say, this is an interesting antagonistic relationship in a way that uh, in a way that's very, very, I think it's unique and it's very different. And so it's going to be interesting to see how Poison Ivy deals with the Gardener, because if the Gardener goes full psycho and full eco terrorist, it's going to force Poison Ivy to deal with those issues in her life that she's not dealt with before, really, and that is becoming more comfortable with her role, or understanding what is her role with the green and the gray. And J. Willow Wilson's done a really good job from the beginning on that. So I can see people staying on board for this series.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, next up, this one is in both of our top five. JSA #3, written by Jeff Lemire, art by Diego Orlatugi, colors by Luis Guerrero, letters by Steve Wands. Give us your thoughts.
All right, just coming up here. Uh, yeah, Jeff Lemire has this is a he's done a good job focusing this issue. A lot of focus on Hawkman and Hawkgirl, and it's interesting that Hawkman is not dead. At the end of last issue, Hawkman got like impaled, and it looks like it. It looked like for sure Hawkman was likely going to be dead, and likely have to reincarnate into another life, because he was completely impaled. But as it turns out, uh, he was he was resurrected, like not resurrected, but he was saved. He was healed by the demons that essentially attacked and killed him. And the demons refer to him. The demons three are the characters that injured the Hawkman and incapacitated him, and then sort of saved him. And they refer to him as the reincarnated man. And they've got some machinations going on. Meanwhile, Jeff Lemire continues to script a sort of a on again, off again relationship between Jade and I'm not sure who is that character.
Sand.
What's that?
Sand,
Oh, Sand. Sorry, yeah, Jade and Sand. So
formerly
they got that
Sandy the
going.
Golden Boy. Yeah.
Right, right. Sorry. Yeah. Meanwhile, you got Doctor Midnight, who is trying to figure out why Jakeem is still incapacitated, because Jakeem apparently seems to be completely healthy, but yet it still seems to be incapacitated. She discovers something in Jakeem's blood, um, and it looks like maybe a little, I'm guessing, has something to do with Obsidian, because Obsidian knows that she discovered something, and Obsidian, we know, is working undercover, and he's betrayed the team. He's working with the Injustice Society, so he
It's not
prevents
even Obsidian, it's Johnny Sorrow,
Johnny
right?
Sorrow. Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Johnny
Yeah.
Sorrow is
He's
impersonating Obsidian,
right.
and
Exactly.
thank you. And so Doctor Midnight gets incapacitated. So this is, I guess, building up all this, the plot and the machinations of the Injustice Society are bearing more fruit in this issue, and yeah, and we get more of we get Dr. Fate. We got a Wildcat. Always a character that gives out. He's always good for a good speech. Wildcat, when he's not busy punching something, he's always giving inspiration to other minor characters. That's a tropey thing for Wildcat to do. In fact, Wildcat's even doing that in the pages of Black Canary, Back in Black, for Dinah Lance in her battle with Lady Shiva, and In any event, Doctor Fate actually does a good job kicking some ass here, and Hawk Girl, Hawk Girl wants to, despite the fact that this is Kendra Saunders' Hawk Girl. This is not Shiera, so she's not connected. What Because of Shiera actually exists in this time frame with Hawkman. That connection, Kendra Saunders is no longer connected to uh, Hawkman. Uh, like soul wise or whatever, and that Heth set that's been a curse that's been severed. But she nonetheless feels an obligation to try to go into hell to save Hawkman, and that's what she does. And yeah, uh, we have a interesting development at the end. Kid Eternity shows up. I don't know a lot about Kid Eternity. I don't know. I'm not familiar. I'm not very familiar with that character. I Every time Kid Eternity came out, I know Kid Eternity had a comic book. I never collected it, so I don't know much about the character. But you know, so how this plays out, this is all new to me, and I trust Jeff Lemire has a story and where this is going. I'm not. I'm not entirely sure, but you know he continues to build a plot, and I like the art. Diego Olategua's art. It's not bad. It's a sort of wasn't bad. It's very detailed. The details that he renders in hell, and even as Surtur, Hawkman sees Surtur sort of chained in hell. The visuals in hell are quite good. The visuals when Doctor Fate takes on Solomon Grundy and the Red Lantern and are pretty damn good. So all in all, it's an action packed issue, and Jeff Lemire he knows what the assignment is. He's doing a decent job. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it definitely feels like it's a much longer story than I had originally thought, like much more involved, which makes sense considering there's such a big cast. But I think back to All Star Squadron. It's because I haven't read a lot of the Jeff Johns JSA, so when I think of these characters and a team book and what have you, I go back to All Star Squadron, Roy Thomas, classic '80s stuff. And even though that was a big cast, it wasn't constructed. I mean, comics were just different back then. It wasn't as much relationship stuff, and things just weren't as complicated. Storytelling has become more sophisticated, and thank God, right? So I guess I should have known that this would be that, especially with Jeff Lemire writing it. He's so great at character dynamics. So I'm really enjoying it. The back and forth, will they, won't they, with Jade and Sand. I don't know that much about Kid Eternity other than the Vertigo. So to me, that means it's more of a weird type character. So interesting to have them show up. I guess we'll see how that works. But it definitely seems like this series is a slow build, and I'm here for it. With the Injustice Society, and when Jeff was on the show, he talked about that, how he wanted a villain group that was, for lack of a better term, worthy of the Justice Society. They were going to be a legitimate threat, and it definitely seems like with Johnny Sorrow impersonating Obsidian and what have you, that's going to be the case. And then the other thing that Jeff had talked about was just how surprised he was, how interested he's become in Dr. Fate or Dr. Midnight rather, as a character. And yeah, you get that right away here too, which definitely seems like she's going to be playing a big role in the story. So yeah, this has been, I don't want to say a surprise. That's the wrong word because it's Jeff Lemire. So you expect it to be good. But again, this is another situation where it's once again exceeding expectations. So yeah, just really, really, happy with how this is turning out. And the Orla Tigui art is fantastic. Line weights are a little on the heavy side, but it works. I mean, these are golden age characters, so you expect them to have a little bit of weight to them, I guess you'd say, in a way. So all right, there's one more book, not in either of our top five, but it's Shazam number 19. Josie Campbell is the writer, Dan McDade on art, Roberto Poggi on inks, Trish Mulvihill on colors, and Wes Abbott on letters. I did enjoy this issue, maybe a little bit more so than I've been enjoying the run so far. One of the things about it is it didn't. I mean, they're still separate characters, Billy Batson and Shazam, which is an interesting development that Josie Campbell has introduced here, but it doesn't really show up. Like that doesn't really manifest itself much in this story. But this also, much like JSA, seems like it's a much longer, complicated story that's being built, and it's fun. And we're getting sort of new gods and new beings as the origin of Freddy's powers, of Captain Marvel Jr.'s powers. So that's interesting as well, giving him a little bit of agency. So, what do you think of this?
Well, it's interesting. We have a love interest for Billy Batson, who ends up being uh, Butisha or Savannah, who's actually uh, uh, a white-haired young lady who is clearly set out to portray Billy Batson. Mr. Mind is the villain. Mr. Mind has basically taken over the body and the mind of Georgina Savannah, and there's you really see just how he's pretty wicked, Mr. Mind. He's pretty wicked. He's and it actually ends with sort of like I think this is writer Josie Campbell's attempt to sort of break the fourth wall, because the final page is Mr. Mind, the little worm coiled up, saying, "I'm inside you too," talking to the reader, because Mr. Mind is infecting all the, Mr. Mind is through an app is affecting all the people of the city, and Billy's clearly been betrayed, but at least we have a reconciliation between the captain and the commander, uh, between Freddie and between Billy, which is pretty good. And yeah, I thought it was well done. Josie Campbell's doing a good job on this, and it's just I think that this is a series that might get a little bit more attention if the competition wasn't so fierce. Because I thought this ended on a high note, and this definitely raises the stakes for a Shazam comic. And she's doing a pretty good job here. And quite frankly, I think she deserves more attention, because I think this issue was certainly on par with a lot of the stuff I read when Mark Waid was writing it, to be quite blunt. And I think the art as well was pretty good. So kudos to Mick Dade on the art. And so yeah, no, I thought it didn't make the top five, but it was still an enjoyable read for me.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. One of my favorite issues of Josie's run so far.
Yeah.
All right. So that does it for the individual issues that are out this week. I will mention that there is a DC Comics Presents Facsimile edition. That's the first appearance of the Teen Titans in a bonus book in the middle. It's Superman, Green Lantern team up classic. I have an issue of that, but man, mine's a reader copy, and I read the crap out of that thing. Cover's about to fall off. It is beat to hell, but I have it. There's also a facsimile edition of Batman 608, which is the first issue of the Hush storyline from Jim Lee and Jeff Loeb back in the day. So if you're so inclined, never read that, I have so many copies of that issue as well. But anyway, it's out there if you're interested. As far as collected editions this week, we have Detective Comics Volume 4, Gotham Nocturne. This collects 1076 through 1080. That's the Rom V run of Detective Comics. We also have a new 52 volume 2 trade paperback. This collects the second half of the series, issues 27 through 52, the weekly 52 event from back in the day, with so many people that helped contribute to that. I can't possibly name them all. And then there's also a DC versus Marvel, the Amalgam Age omnibus hardcover and softcover, both available. And I should mention that that Detective Comics collection also is available in hardcover and softcover. So those are the collected editions that are out this week, if you are so inclined. All right, book of the week, Rocky.
Well, you
I
can go
think I
first.
know.
It's fairly obvious for me, I can tell you that.
Uh, yeah. Well, I guess it's obvious for me too, or maybe I tried not to make it so obvious. And I know that at times we try not to pick the same book, but it's simply not possible this time to not pick the same book. Uh, without question, my book of the week is Absolute Superman. Like I can't, I can't. It stands head and shoulders above anything this week. This was a great week, a really great week with some fantastic books. I had a hard time ranking everything when it came time to do it. Like literally everything but one book. I was like, where am I going to put this? Um, but when it came to my pick of the week, that there was no question that I was picking Absolute Superman. So
Yeah, no, Jason Aaron's just doing a fantastic job, and the whole Absolute universe is really good. And it's funny. While I might rank them, give or take, Absolute Batman here and the Absolute Batman, Absolute Superman, and then Absolute Wonder Woman. I will say that they're so wonderfully different that they're wonderfully different, and it's making me more excited about. And it's a long ways off, but we know inevitably Absolute Superman, Wonder Woman, and Absolute Batman are going to meet up. But I'm in no rush for them to meet because I'm enjoying their own stories, and all the power to that. I like the approach they're taking the time to curate the stories of these absolute characters so that they can grow before they put them together as a absolute trinity or an absolute. I love that. It just feels like DC's really taking their time, and it's just they're doing such a great bang up job. So it's oh man, good feeling.
yeah, definitely a good feeling. So all right. Well, again, everybody, we love when you guys leave comments. Specifically this week, we'd love to see your comments about Absolute Superman #3, our book of the week for both of us. And I'll reiterate, if you're not liking it, please explain why. I want to understand how anybody could not like this book. It's so fantastic. But that being said, if you check us out on your favorite podcasting app or platform, you can go back and listen to thousands and thousands of previous episodes of The Comic Source. Just do a search for The Comic Source on whatever app or platform you use. But if you're listening there, be sure you head over to YouTube and subscribe to Rocky's channel. Comic Space Boom, exclamation point. It's where this DC Spotlight comes out every week. Ring the notification bell, subscribe, like the video, do all that stuff that really helps us with our reach and to gain new audience members. Also, don't forget the Indie Spotlight comes out every week on the Comic Source channel. On YouTube, just do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe. Very, very, very small independent spotlight this week. Only a couple books, but we're also going to announce the winners for all of the codes for Global Comics, the digital platform that's the best place to get digital comics moving forward. The best user interface. Pretty much the only platform I've ever used or been made aware of that works on a cell phone. So, anyway, we really appreciate you guys joining us. Happy New Year to everybody. Wishing everybody a healthy, happy, and successful 2025. And that's going to do it. So thanks for joining us as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
Catch you later.